Thanks for being here, y'all, and for the work that you're doing, be able to bring some of these issues to light. We appreciate that very much. Shajar, we have talked often about a bill that Claire McCaskill and I have worked on and tried to get done in the last session of Congress called the Taxpayers' Right to Know. What you've done in the duplication work is phenomenal. What we tried to get accomplished in the last session and what we can hopefully get accomplished very soon is to be able to get some of this evaluation tools that's out there. We're missing a tool, and you're missing a tool. Right. We wait for this report yearly when it comes out. It's something we should be able to pull immediately with just the agencies making that information available. Every taxpayer should be able to pull this information. We should be able to see how things are evaluated. We should be able to see the basic spend patterns. Should not be a rocket science request of our agencies. They already have that information just to be able to make it available. So any other comments you want to make, as we've talked about before, the taxpayers' right to know in that particular bill?
I would urge the Congress to complete passage of that bill and send it to the President for signature. I think it would make a huge difference in identifying overlap, duplication, fragmentation in the federal government and provide a better accountability tool to the Congress and the agencies. It's severely lacking. One of the biggest difficulties we've had in executing our responsibility under this requirement to produce this report is the lack of information that's available on what it costs for programs, how have they ever been evaluated, what's the evaluation shown. This would have that information automatically available and be really a very much more efficient way to address this issue. So I would encourage its passage.
Well, we look forward to that. It is passed unanimously in the House, and it seems to get caught up in the Senate. And so we'll try to work towards the final passage on that to be able to get that done. You mentioned in your report this year the uncompensated care issue in hospitals,
yes.
Which is an incredibly difficult to wrap your head around type issue. I'd like for you to be able to talk through anything you can on it. This balances out whether the federal government, as they pay hospitals for uncompensated care that comes in, whether they pay it on the Medicare or the Medicaid portion. Right. Talk us through that, because that's $1 billion savings, but that's also a very big issue to hospitals.
Yes. And it has been a big issue for years. The problems that we identified is right now, in order to determine how to pay uncompensated care, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Studies, CMS, uses the Medicaid workload of that particular hospital. So they don't have actual numbers on what the uncompensated care has been. So they use a proxy. That proxy is not a good proxy. And of course, with the expansion of Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, there are more people insured, so there should be less uncompensated care in theory and in practice. And right now, that's not the case. Right. The second part of this that's a problem is when CMS goes to give the Medicare program goes to give money to hospitals for uncompensated care, they don't take into consideration what they've already paid under the Medicaid program. So there's a possibility that you could be compensating more than once for the same cost. So we've recommended to CMS that they collect the actual cost figures for uncompensated care and reimburse the hospital a certain percentage of the actual uncompensated care. They've agreed with that, but they don't plan to implement it until 2021. They want to give the hospitals time to adjust. I would encourage the Congress to encourage them to act more quickly, given the unsustainable nature of these two programs and the need to reduce their costs.
I do know you brought to CMS an issue that you identified before about with the Affordable Care Act and the way the subsidies are done in areas where there's fraud potential there, in areas you all tested. You brought to them 8 recommendations of what to do. CMS said they were going to do it and then didn't implement any of those.
Yeah, they're still trying to work through doing the risk assessment. We understand it's almost complete. We are looking now at the premium tax credit, the implementation by both CMS and IRS, and we should have a report available this summer for the Congress. That'll be our first complete look at that whole process from, as Mr. George mentioned, Russell mentioned, both IRS and CMS have responsibilities under that credit. So we're looking at both.
Thank you. Russell, we've talked before about this as well, and that's the EITC and all the refundable tax credits. Often the IRS will come back and say this falls on preparers. As is mentioned, about half of them actually have a preparer. IRS has said if we get a certification on these preparers, then we'll get fewer mistakes. But they attempted to do that about 6 years ago and failed, and then they're trying to come back at it again. The recommendation's been made to IRS before. Instead of doing a requirement, that's a mandatory requirement for all of your preparers to go through a certification, you just say to preparers, if you're going to get faster returns, you then have to go through this certification. If you are going to be a preparer, your return, if you're not certified, may take 3 months to come back. If you are certified, it may take 21 days. And to be able to just tell them, if you want to be a certified IRS tax preparer and get faster returns to your clients, you've got to do this. That way they get training in EITC. Why would that not work?
Senator, before responding, and I neglected to do this at the outset of my comments to questions, since President Reagan, every president has issued a directive indicating that tax policy is within the sole discretion of the Assistant Secretary for Tax Policy. And so the answers that I'm giving you is not on behalf of the entire department or the administration.
It's fine. We'll take that into account.
But there's no question that that is an idea that is worthy of consideration. But as you pointed out, there was a sensible proposal to have certification. And for some reason, again, whether it was the industry or others, it was not accepted.
Mr. Jarrell.
Yeah, Senator Lankford, I could add on to this point. We recommended to IRS several years ago that they should regulate the tax preparers. They went ahead with a proposal. It got taken to court. The court found they didn't have the statutory authority. So I think Congress could give some authority in this area. It could be a good program, but I think congressional support would be important. We have an outstanding recommendation to do this. It's one of the things that we mentioned. Senator McCaskill mentioned there's a high error rate associated with paid preparers. We sent an undercover team into 19 tax preparers to try to see if they'd give us the right answer. Only 2 of the 19 gave us the right answer.
That's not surprising in some ways, but it is stunning. And one quick comment on this, Mr. Chairman, on this for VA as well. Thank you for stepping up and taking the lead in St. Louis VA and other areas. We have a brand new director in the Oklahoma City VA, Mr. Velazquez, who is doing a fantastic job in trying to help us in a turnaround. We are the poster child to what GAO has mentioned on construction issues. Currently, our 7th floor is not usable. Our 3rd floor is not usable. We can't get a parking lot finished outside, and it's been a chain of, the elevator doesn't work in the middle of the building. It's been just a chain of issues with contractors that Director Velazquez is trying to help us unpack and to be able to fix. But this issue has been an ongoing issue. It's not new, but I appreciate everyone stepping up to be able to take the lead and be able to help us in that, as our Oklahoma City Director has done, as others have done as well. So thank you.
I know, Wade, and it is my privilege and honor to serve in this capacity. Thank you.
Senator Peters.